it
Oh,
here.
you can't hear it. I've got to start over here.
Have a nice trip. See you next fall. Bye.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, present here as well as live stream. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure we have a very informative and interesting and helpful and constructive program for us this morning, given by Leah White from the Anti-Defamation League. And she is the director of the regional area, and also, I forgot. Stacy. I was wanting to say Sharon, and I knew that wasn't right. Stacy Cushing, also here with the league, is working with Leah. So, without further ado, you're on.
Thank you so much for having us. So my name is Leah White, and I am the Associate Regional Director for Anti-Defamation League Texoma's office. We'll get into the history of ADL but I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. I'm going to start with my introduction. I'll pass it over to Stacy. So I am born and raised Texan from El Paso, and even as a child, I became very involved in my community. I was on the mayor's council for getting the voting rights out. I worked as a candy striper in a local hospital, and in high school I joined my grandmother, who was the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and began acting as a docent at the local Holocaust museum. So I guess you can say I've always had a passion for social justice and civil rights. So when I left El Paso to come to college, and I went to UNT in Denton, I joined and then later became the president of the Hillel there, which is the Jewish student organization. And then as I left UNT, I got my first job out of college, which was at a local synagogue in Dallas. And for 10 years I worked there, which began my career in Jewish nonprofit work. So for the last 20-something years, I have been working in the Jewish community in all different areas. In 2012, I joined a class for young leadership called Glass Leadership through the ADL. I had known about ADL, known its work, but it was really an amazing experience to get to learn even more, and it really began my love affair with ADL. So from that point on, I started volunteering and doing whatever I could with ADL projects. And in 2018, I met with Cheryl Drazen, who was the regional director, and a job had opened up there. So I jumped on it and have been with ADL ever since. So I'm very blessed to be able to be a part of this community and come into communities like yours to share how ADL fights hate for good and to live out the mission of stopping the defamation of Jewish people and creating a fair world for all. I'm going to pass it over to Stacy so she can introduce. Oh.
And I have a very loud voice. I don't know if you just want me to speak into a microphone, but I am Stacy Cushing, and I am the Regional Deputy Director for the ADL Texoma. I actually just started in July, so this is my first in-person program, so thank you all for having me. This is very exciting. I have been working in the nonprofit world for about 8 years now. I had moved to the ADL. I was the Senior Director of Girl Experience for Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. And the one thing that I loved about Girl Scouts was the take action component. If anybody is familiar with Girl Scouts at all, they know that it's founded on take action. And when this position opened up, what I really love about the ADL and about the work we do here and why I couldn't say no to the position is the desire to take action in the community. And not just the desire to take action, but also how to take action in the community. And doing education programs and teaching people, young people, adults, different communities, how to take action and how to make a difference. So I am here learning how to present, doing some of the presentations, watching Leah because she is our resident expert in this, and also adding a few bits of my words too. So thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here, and we will get started with the presentation.
Great. Judy, do you mind switching slides for me? Next one. Okay, one more. So let's start with the history of ADL a little bit. So, there we go. So, ADL is an anti-hate organization that was founded in 1913. a little background about why it was started. In 1910, there was a vast backdrop of anti-Semitism throughout the United States. A lawyer from Chicago named Sigmund Livingston decided that he needed to start an organization to combat anti-Semitism as well as all different forms of hate. He knew that you couldn't fight hate in one area without fighting hate in all areas. So with $200, he began this organization in a corner in his law office with one other person. So 1913 is when this organization was started in Chicago, with the clear mission that we still have today to fight to combat anti-Semitism and to create a fair and equal world for all. The same mission has been our mission since 1913, which you can push the next button and I'll show our mission. In the 1920s, the need for this organization became even more prevalent with a case that happened in Georgia. A man by the name of Leo Frank, who owned a pencil factory in Georgia, was tried and convicted unfairly for the rape of a murder of a woman who worked in his office. This trial was completely tinged by anti-Semitism. He was completely unfairly and wrongly accused and sent to prison, and while in prison, he was dragged from the cell by a group of mobsters, including local officials, and lynched. Sigmund Livingston saw this happening and saw things like this happening across the United States and really ramped up the work of the ADL, and that was the spur to really begin this organization, and it's been growing ever since. Our work has been we have done work in civil rights throughout the world, throughout the 20th century, including creating legislation and fighting for all sorts of things. And if you want to push the next button. Yeah, so we work in civil rights, on hate crimes, extremism, and education. We currently have 25 regional offices around the country and an office in Israel. We have 3 offices in Texas alone. There is one office in Austin that covers just the Austin area, an office in Houston that covers pretty much everywhere in Texas except for what we cover. We are North Texas, which goes all the way to Louisiana and almost all the way to El Paso, but we stop right before El Paso. Not really sure why. El Paso goes to Houston, and we cover all of Oklahoma. So our office is called Texoma because we cover North Texas, Oklahoma. But we work very closely with our colleagues in all the other regional offices, and we also work extremely closely with what we call the Central Division, which is the division that we are a part of. This division covers all the Texas offices, the office in Omaha, and the office in Denver. We are the Central Division, and we do a lot of work as this whole division. Yes, go.
So the office in Israel is in Tel Aviv?
It's in Jerusalem.
It's in Jerusalem. And so all these offices, you're monitoring everyone, right? So everyone's interacting. So you can see something that's brewing in Israel.
Well, we not only have offices have an office in Israel, but we also have a Department of International Affairs. And they really cover everything that's happening across the country, across the world. So not just Israel, but we do have an office based in Israel, but we have people all over the world within our Office of International Affairs.
And yes, we are monitoring hate and discrimination worldwide on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
We have people who are, their jobs are to monitor online, in person, anything that's happening across the world. And we actually have this world of Zoom has allowed us to have even more,
Thank you so much.
more ways to communicate. I shouldn't say more ways. We've been able to take advantage of the Zoom effect and be able to quickly get on calls, quickly be able to communicate. We were speedy before, but we now can bring more people in and react super quickly, which has been, for me, really interesting to watch. And as an organization, it's great to see how quickly we can react to things worldwide and how everybody in the organization, nationally and worldwide, can be on the same page and react and do what is needed.
Internationally, ADL also puts forth a report every year. It's called the Global 100. It started in 2014, in which we polled 100 countries about their views on anti-Semitism, and it showed what the different views are, what the different, in a number of different areas. And we do this every year. It's no longer 100 countries. I think in 2019, I think the last one that came out in 2020 was 14 countries. But it does pull the views of anti-Semitism in many different areas around the world, so we are well aware of what the trends are.
And does this information you share with the SCN, or
I'm sorry, say that again?
you work with the SCN as well?
Yes, we do. We have a partnership with them. We actually get daily updates from SCN. You want to move on to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions about the ADL?
Does the ADL stand for something?
Oh.
Anti-Defamation League.
Yes, Anti-Defamation League. Sorry, I should have said that. Yeah, Anti-Defamation League. We really, it's such a long name that we really go just by ADL. But and that change came about 5 years ago, where we cut the Anti-Defamation League and went to ADL.
All right, so we can go to the next slide. So this is the definition of anti-Semitism that we use on a daily basis. As you can see, it's a form of prejudice or discrimination that is directed toward Jews and individuals and as a group. Anti-Semitism is based on stereotypes and myths that target Jews as people, their religious practices and beliefs, and the Jewish state of Israel. Anybody have anything else? We are going to get into local incidents in a few minutes, but does anybody else have anything they want to share about anti-Semitism in general? So this is important. We like to start every program off with just level setting on definitions, because as work, we all have to agree, have a semblance of agreement on what these issues are, and it's part of our core mission. It's part of who we are. So in talking about anti-Semitism, as Leah said, our mission is based on fighting anti-Semitism and discrimination. So we need to go into the next slide, which, what is hate? What is hate? Yep. Hate is an extreme dislike for something or someone. If hate is based on an aspect of someone's identity, it can be their race, their religion, their gender identity, disability, sexual orientation. It can result in interpersonal bias, discrimination, hate incidences, hate crimes, and or involvement in organizations like hate groups. Does anybody have any other thing to add about hate? I'm sure we've all seen hate in our lives. And so, again, important that as a mission of what we do with ADL, important to know that these are the things that we do. These are the things that we are monitoring, watching on a daily basis, and we're reacting to. We're either reacting to or we are educating about.
I think the only thing that I might add is that hate is learned.
Hate is learned.
People aren't born with hate.
One of the things we do teach in ADL, I don't know if that comes into our thing, is that while hate is learned, it can also be unlearned.
Yes.
Can we say that on the mic, please?
Oh, sure. We say that hate is, you have mentioned that hate is learned, and ADL also says that hate can be unlearned, and that is a lot of the education that we do. So the next slide, please. So this is our pyramid of hate, how we get from just a bias feeling to genocide. So if you don't mind just clicking through all the way to the top. As you can see, our pyramid of hate starts with bias attitudes. It goes into acts of bias, systematic discrimination, bias-motivated violence, and then genocide. Now, if we let bias attitudes become normalized, it makes acts of bias like slurs and bullying become acceptable. If this becomes acceptable, it is easier for the denial of justice and fair treatment for all identities to fall by the wayside, and for discrimination to become normalized. Although someone can choose to discriminate on an individual level, what we really are talking about here is discrimination through systems of power, education, employment, housing, voting rights, criminal justice, and disparities. So as you can see, it starts with bias attitudes. These attitudes, once they are normalized, and if they are fought against, it becomes an act of, it comes from biased attitudes to acts of bias. If an act of bias aren't fought against, it is discrimination, even subtly, because it becomes the norm. It becomes much more likely that bias-motivated violence can occur. Murder, assault, vandalism, threats, targeting of people because of their gender, because of their identity, their sexual orientation, their race, their religion, and so on. Now, you can see it keeps moving up the pyramid. Acts of bias turn into systematic discrimination, which turn into bias-motivated violence, which turns into genocide. And at the top of the pyramid is the unthinkable. It is genocide, systematically trying to annihilate an entire group of people. Now, most of us has learned about the Holocaust, and we have talked with younger students who think the only genocide is the Holocaust. But I'm sure all of you can think of other genocides in history, some that are occurring now, others that have taken place. And so it's important that we remember that genocide has occurred for a long time and it continues to occur today. Now, we are not saying that all insensitive remarks that we make at the bottom of the pyramid turn into genocide. We are just saying that genocide generally started at the bottom of the pyramid with thoughts of bias, with a biased attitude. So when we are being insensitive and make remarks of bullying and they go unchecked, that is how we lead to vandalism, and that is how we lead to assault and things like that. So it starts and somebody moves up. It doesn't mean that it goes all the way down. So does anybody have anything that they want to share on this pyramid of hate?
I would say that personal, like at the bottom, biased attitudes, personal arrogance goes along with that. If you're not arrogant about that you're better because you're not what somebody else is. I mean, if you are arrogant that you are better than what somebody else is that's different from you, then that gets to be a problem. If you're not arrogant about it and you're just noting differences, and I mean, you can be playful just in jest of fun, that's okay. I think maybe that arrogance plays a part in all of this.
Not just arrogance, which is a true statement, but it's also a lack of education on what differences are and what they mean, and which is where we come into where we feel like this hate that is learned and this arrogance that can be learned can be unlearned by education.
Yes, I agree.
And also, it's the group of people that you're around, right? So if your biased attitude doesn't go unchecked and you're with other people who have that biased attitude, that's how it leads to acts and threats and vandalism and moves up the pyramid, is that you have these arrogant or attitudes that don't go unchecked. So, and that is where the education and the, to your point, the unlearning comes in, right? Is hopefully we can be proactive in making that happen. So now that we've all level set on what discrimination is, what anti-Semitism is, the pyramid of hate, we are going to go into things that are happening in our community in anti-Semitism, discrimination, and tell you what's going on. All these reports are also available on our ADL website. So.
Okay, next slide, please. One more. I am missing, there it is. So I'm going to give you, so this is where we come to the really fun part. I'm going to give you a lot of data, but this is all really important information, and it's really scary, and I'm sorry we're doing so much heavy information right now, but I think it's really important to share. So I'm going to start with the FBI annual hate crime statistics that were released just a few months ago. Every year, the FBI does come out with a report that is based on the previous year's hate crime statistics. So this was the stuff that came out in 2020. In 2021 was for hate crimes that happened in 2020. This is based on voluntary law enforcement reporting to the Bureau, and we know across the board there is a lack of reporting. So these numbers are as accurate as possible based on the reporting that occurs. But we are working very hard with law enforcement to try and get more reporting because there is an extreme underreporting. So 2020 saw a 6% increase in reported hate crimes from the previous year, with 7,759 hate crime incidents, which rose up from 7,314 incidents in 2019. This did represent the highest total in 12 years. The reported hate crimes that targeted the Jewish community made up nearly 60% of all religion-based hate crimes. They do break down the report on different types of hate crimes. So in religious-based hate crimes, almost 60% happened to the Jewish community. Reported hate crimes targeting Black people rose from to 2,755 from 1,930 the prior year, a 43% increase. And the number of anti-Asian hate crimes rose from 158 to 274, also a huge increase. In Dallas, we showed a 27% increase in reporting with 38 incidents compared to 30. And in Oklahoma City, which is part of our region as well, we showed a 67% increase in reporting with 5 incidents compared to 3. Those numbers are small, but it is a huge rise. And one of the reasons I think that the numbers have jumped so much in these two communities is because our law enforcement in those two areas are reporting more. We've been working very closely with them, and they are reporting a lot more. So if you want to go to the next slide, let's talk about some national numbers, and then I'll go into local numbers. This data comes from our annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents that comes out every year in the spring usually. This one came out in May this year. The audit stems from incidents reported to us from the previous year and that are investigated that we help provide resources for. In the Texoma office, I am the person that the incidents are reported to. I work with our national office. Stacy helps me with this very closely. So if you have an incident of hate, discrimination, vandalism, assault, any of these things, that gets reported to us, and we work through these incidents with our local resources and national resources. So as you can see by the graph on the screen, the number of anti-Semitic incidents is growing. In 2019 was our highest number ever, with 2,107 anti-Semitic incidents throughout the United States, which was a 12% increase from 2018, and it was the highest number on record since we started doing this audit in 1979. The reason the numbers were so much higher in 2019 is because of a lot of different things, but 3 major attacks. A white supremacist opened fire at the Chabad of Poway on April 27th, killing 1 person. 2 individuals, at least one who was associated with anti-Semitic Black Hebrew Israelite sect, attacked a Jewish grocery store in Jersey City on December 10th, killing 3 people. And on December 28th, an individual attacked a Hanukkah party in the home of a rabbi in Monsey, New York with a knife, leaving 1 person in critical condition and injuring more. It is also important to note, though, that these incidents count for one. So even though in the Jewish grocery store killed 3 people, that counts as 1 incident.
So we're talking about hate. So is desecrating a gravestone an incident?
Absolutely.
And putting a swastika on the door of a building?
Absolutely. I'll actually get into it in just a minute, what the ways we track hate in the different areas. That would include, that's vandalism.
It's also a little coincidence that the hate crimes all of a sudden started going up with a past president.
Well, we see there is a definite correlation in the rise in anti-Semitism and hate-based incidents starting in 2016. Before 2018, 2016 was our largest number. Next slide. So let's talk about the last 5 years, which is what I was going to show here. You can see the rise I'm sorry, 2017 was our, so if you see 2016, you see this giant jump in 2016. We went down a little bit in 2018, went back up in 2019, and then we went down slightly in 2020. If you want to go to the next slide. So let's break it down. This relates to your question here. Let's break it down a little bit more. We do categorize incidents in 3 different categories: harassment, vandalism, assault. Harassment includes all kinds of harassment, online, in person and online. Our numbers are higher for online harassment in 2020, obviously, because of where we were. But they actually tend to be higher online now, more anyway. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was actually going to jump in here, and this is kind of what you were saying, is we've, ADL's really gone into the online hate area and really been investigating and doing a lot of research and working with a lot of people. And so we have a lot of reports about online hate, and there's been a lot of reports sent into us about discrimination and hate online. So
Absolutely.
you can definitely see with, as the importance of social media in the lives of people, you can also see the correlation between how much we are relying on the internet and social media, and also the rise in incidences.
Yes.
And also know that, you know, these incidences are so, this is just what's reported to us.
Absolutely.
So it is just a small portion, just a representation of things that are actually happening out there in the world.
It's important to also note, and what Stacy was saying, is that we have different sects of the ADL. One of the sects that we have is our Center for Technology and Society, which tracks online hate, pretty much. That is what they do. They've also, a member of our Center on Technology and Society, Dave Sifry, recently testified in front of Congress about online hate platforms. We also have another organization as part of ADL, which is called our Center on Extremism. And this group, although it has grown in the last couple of years, it's about 20 people that are based all over the country, and their job is to get deep into hate groups. They are in the chat rooms. They are undercover. They are monitoring and tracking so that we know about hate groups and extremist groups, like on the ground.
Is there a way to track all the hate online which is taken to a higher level of an actual violent
Absolutely.
incident?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we also have worked on recently is we worked on legislation here in Texas that's anti-doxing legislation, which is one of the things that happens very often with online online harassment. It'll start, like with the pyramid of hate, it starts as a slur or something, and then it escalates to the point where you're actually doxing, and what doxing means is putting forth personal information online with the intent to cause harm. And so we worked on legislation in Texas this past year, which actually was passed for anti-doxing legislation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually wrote the bill that was passed. So, for 2020, there were 1,242 incidents of harassment cases. This is harassment with anti-Semitic language or actions. This increased by 10% from 2019. This is national numbers. Vandalism, we had 751 vandalism incidents. And this is where property was destroyed or damaged in a manner that harmed or intimidated Jews. This includes swastikas, slurs, anything of that sort. Acts of anti-Semitic vandalism decreased by 18% from 2019. A lot of that is because people weren't in person as much. Assault. Assault is always our lowest number, which is a good thing. There were 31 assault incidents, cases where individuals were physically targeted with violence accompanied by evidence of anti-Semitic animus. Anti-Semitic assault decreased by 49% in 2020. You want to go to the next slide? We also break it down by location where the incidents occurred. So the largest area is always public spaces, but we also break it down by colleges and universities, K through 12 non-Jewish schools, business establishments, homes, housing, Jewish institutions, and anywhere else. And one more slide, that's national numbers. This is how we break it down by state. You can see that by the different colors. Orange are the states with the largest numbers of anti-Semitic incidents reported. They are the states with the largest numbers of Jews, obviously. Texas is one of them. New York, New Jersey, California, Florida. Those are all areas where we have the largest numbers of anti-Semitic incidents. Texas saw a 5% increase in the number of reported anti-Semitic incidents in 2020. Much of that can be attributed to the incidents that happened in our actual region. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about our region.
I was just going to say something about Texas also is I was going to say something about Texas in general is just based on what's happening, we will probably see, we do not have the numbers for 2021, but we will probably see an uptick in numbers in the state of Texas for the 2021 year.
Yeah.
Because if anybody was keeping track of what was going on in Austin and all that has been going on in the southern part of our state, which we work very closely with, there's been a lot of incidences there. We've tracked all of them. We've responded to all of them. But the trend is looking like the numbers will go up for 2021 right now.
Absolutely, not just in Texas, but in our region, specifically in our region as well. Our audit date to cut off will be December 31st for 2021, and as the two people that track incidents in our region, we can almost guarantee those numbers. But one of the reasons is also because more people are reporting. The incidents are increasing. I'm not going to say they're not increasing, because they are, but more people are reporting the incidents happening, which is a good thing, because as we know more incidents happening, we're able to track trends and provide better resources. So let's talk about the anti-Semitism in our region, Texoma, North Texas and Oklahoma. From 2019 to 2020, we had a 127% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. Based on the three categories, we had 9 incidents of harassment, which was an increase of 50%. These ranged from Zoom bombings, which was very prevalent, to some flyering and things with extremist groups and gatherings of extremist groups. Vandalism was our largest number, with 16 vandalism incidents. This is where property was damaged in different ways. This included graffiti on prominent Dallas locations, on school playgrounds, flyering, which was a huge thing in 2019 and 2020, flyering on public spaces, on campuses especially. Assault, as has been the case over the last several years, no incidences of assault reported in 2019 or 2020.
So on campuses, if there's a demonstration, it's a pro-Palestinian demonstration, and there's perceived hate that's in the signs that have been carried and whatnot, is that classified as a...
It can be. It could be. If the sign, it's not going to be classified as an anti-Semitic incident if it's just a pro-Palestinian rally. But if there are signs that are truly anti-Semitic signs, then yes, it could classify as an anti-Semitic incident. Does anybody have any questions about these numbers before I go in further local incidents? I know it's a lot of data. So let's talk about some local incidents with the next slide. On the far end, you'll see anti-Semitic graffiti. This was on a newspaper stand in downtown Dallas. In the middle, there were swastikas that were spray painted on the parking garage in downtown Dallas, and also on a donation truck for Jewish Family Services. And then you'll see an incident of Zoom bombing that was pretty prevalent that happened in a community Tisha B'Av service, in which that was open to the public, and in which some pretty awful harassment of the Jewish community happened. So those are just some basic examples of things that we see. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you a couple more. On the far side, you'll see flags, a flag that was hung over an overpass. And what we're seeing a lot of lately, which has been the largest trend, I'd say, Stacy, is a lot of comparisons about the vaccine to the Holocaust, and these count as anti-Semitic incidents towards our audit. So even with that flag, there were signs that were comparing the vaccine to the Holocaust. And you can see in the Facebook posting, this was actually a posting by Oklahoma GOP party comparing the Holocaust to the vaccine to the Holocaust. And then you can see right here on this side, this was a major stickering incident that happened at the Jewish Community Center in Dallas recently. That were stickers all over the building on all the different signs. You can see different signs that were different types of stickers, but the clear majority were stickers, again, comparing the Holocaust and the vaccine. Does anybody have any questions about these incidents or the types of things that we're seeing? One more slide. Another incident that we were very active in is that you probably all heard about what happened recently in Southlake, in which an administrator called for balancing views of the Holocaust. So in Texoma, we worked really quickly to put out statements, and we spoke to the media. We were in the New York Times. Our Central Division Vice President Cheryl Drayton was actually even on CNN speaking about it. We also very quickly met with school administration in Southlake, the superintendent, administrators, to talk about the incident, talk about why this is not an appropriate way to comment, and to provide resources and trainings for them. One more thing, there was also, was I supposed to? Yes. We also saw a massive rise in increase in anti-Semitic attitudes and incidents in May of 2020 and 2021. In May of 2021. This shows a comparison of what May of 2020 looked like compared to May of 2021, and this was during the conflict in Gaza. Locally, we didn't see a huge increase, but nationally, the numbers were huge.
Who was it, the congressperson who said the Jews in... Yeah, okay. And when you have irresponsible comments from our politicians like that,
Yeah.
and I don't know how ADL can counter that. I mean, we're all so busy shooting from our lasers down into to destroy communities that, it's just, again, I don't know how you educate or unlearn stupid politicians.
It's a struggle. It is a struggle, and we often refute what they're saying and put out statements about why what they say is incorrect.
But they're out like this, and your refute is probably on a back page, if at all, on a byline. But, and that's no fault of yours.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Sir?
I don't necessarily have data to support this, but I would think that there's a general perception that where there's hate crimes, for example, against blacks, there's, I would guess, an increased probability of hate crimes against Jews because a lot of, I guess I'd say redneck or whatever it is.
Shared hate.
It's a lack of education and a general sense of shared hate. Does
the ADL also track
Yes.
hate crimes against blacks
We
as predictors of what may be happening to hate crimes?
Absolutely. We track all incidents of hate. We only put out an audit of anti-Semitic incidents every year, but we track all incidents of hate, and we work with law enforcement and all different groups for education. We have partnerships. We have a really great partnership with the NAACP. We track all incidents of hate. The only
show all different.
huh?
Our website
the website shows, actually, if you go to our website, there is a thing called the HEAT map, which HEAT stands for hate, extremism, assault, terrorism. And it's a almost up to the minute map that you can like scroll over, and it'll show incidents of hate, all kinds of hate, not just anti-Semitic hate. It'll show incidents of hate pretty much up to the minute. It's our most up-to-date map that you'll find.
So
Yeah,
if
it's
you
called
go to
HEAT map.
Yeah, if you go to the heat map on our website, or you follow us on any of the social media, or are watching, our CEO Jonathan Greenblatt is always on television, on CEO on the news stations, talking about this. But we are monitoring hate of all kinds all the time, and we have been monitoring the anti-Asian hate since COVID. We've been all different groups and religions and identities. So we do monitor that, and we do put that out for people to see, so you can see the correlation. And then again, educate, provide resources to communities, and we're doing as much as we can to get out there and in front of it, as you were talking about. There's a lot to get in front of right now. It's a busy job all the time.
We also,
Job is like a mortician, you always have new customers. Unfortunately.
We've also worked very closely with local officials. In 2020, we did several proclamations against hate that were signed by local officials. We had one in the city of Dallas and Denton, Fort Worth. They signed anti-hate proclamations. So,
I also have to say, in just working with Leah and the work that she's done on this with the incidents response, and she works with law enforcement, and then we have somebody who works with schools and everything. Where I do see, which is encouraging to me, is a response to bias incidences, that people are reporting bias incidents and not letting them get to assault and vandalism.
100%.
So I do think that that is a good trend, because if we can get, again, to that bottom of that pyramid where people are talking about bias and we can address the bias in the room, hopefully our young people in the world can then, if we're teaching them to address that bias, right, and as adults we're supporting that, hopefully we can see that bias stop and not escalate to the next level of that pyramid. And I've been, again, like the numbers, and again, we know that they're very small in comparison to what's really happening out there. So when you look at the numbers, you feel a little bit defeated. But when I see the work that we do, and the steps when we go educate people, that they are actually taking action on that bias, and they're doing education programs, and they're doing things. It is encouraging to see the progress that we're making.
yeah. Going back to this slide, if you want to go to the next slide, Judy, we'll just talk a little bit more about what actually happened in that May 2021. We did log 251 incidents from May 1st. The officials started the military action through the end of that month, which was an increase of 115% from the previous year. So we definitely saw this rise. A total of 305 incidents in the entire month of May. And there were 190 cases of harassment, 50 of vandalism, 11 assaults. So 118 of these included explicit references to Israel and Zionism. These were national numbers, and like I said, we did not see a huge increase in incidents in our region, but nationally it was huge. So if we go to the next slide, we are going to move on to positive ways to become an ally. And I'm going to pass it over. Oh, does somebody have a question before we?
As I said, does anybody have questions, comments about the numbers, about what we've talked about so far, about the incidences in Texas versus the national numbers, about the work? We did focus on anti-Semitism, but again, if you go to our website and you do look at it, you can see all the work that we're doing on discrimination and bias in general.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So, as you said, it's a big job. There's always work to be done. So knowing that these are the numbers and these are the trends, and talking about what can we do, what can you do, what can we do as a community to stop this. So the first way is to become an ally. So ally is a big word in 2021. Anybody hear that word a lot? I think it was the number one word. It was just reported as the number one word for 2021. So what does anybody have a way that they're being an ally or they can be an ally? Knowing this, what are some things that you can do? That's a great one. So we really encourage reporting when you see something, you say something, and reporting to us if it needs to go to the local officials, things like that. Were you going to say something?
Participate in hate programs that are trying to deal with hate against another race, another culture, or something like that.
That's great. We love participation, and hopefully if you participate, other people will join you, right?
I think it's important to be vocal. And for example, a client of mine was doing an education program about Hanukkah at the church, and knew that I was Jewish and asked me for some Hanukkah and if I need candles and dreidels and things like that. And I went over, and it was really nice because we had a chance to talk about this a little bit, which I've known them for 20 years, but we've never actually spoken about it. And when we walked outside her home, she said, I love living in this neighborhood because it's so diverse. We have people who are from all over the world. We have black people, and we have, she was telling me how important it was to her that everybody be accepted. And I think that we have to talk about it. I think it gave me a sense of comfort. Without knowing that about her or them as a couple, I wouldn't know necessarily that they were supportive of Jews or of diversity. I might have assumed otherwise. But it was a very big comfort to me, and I was able to say to her, we have to be vocal about this. I think that the people who are center in our country, who are supportive of all different kinds of people, have to be the ones to drown out the fringe who are saying, oh, the country's becoming more divided. No. We have to be the ones who are saying, no, we're becoming more together, and we're unifying ourselves, and we're healing, and we're accepting. And if we're not vocal, then a misperception about what's happening in this country and what we should be doing will take place. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. And I think something that you said is not being afraid to approach that person and ask that question, right? Like that person came to you and asked you about the Hanukkah and about the about that, right? And being open to being asked a question and not judging somebody because they asked you a question, but rather taking a breath and educating them, right?
Well, when our next door neighbor who was Muslim, when things started to just get crazy a couple of years ago, I said hello, and I said, you know what, this is nuts. This is, we will be supportive, and our neighborhood, other women in the neighborhood, we all rallied around, and I'm sure it must have made her feel better. It made me feel better. I mean, it proved to ourselves that, guess what, we're not going to break apart. We're going to pull together and do what was right.
And one of the things we always talk about is getting to know people instead of judging them. So that is a big thing, right? Getting to know people before you judge them. Appreciate people for who they are, and don't judge them based on their appearance, and get involved. Going and just saying hello made. How many times can you personally think of a time that somebody walked up to you and just said hello, and it made all the difference in the world, was welcoming to you? So you were going to say something in the back.
Yeah, I think what Lisa's saying is really, really spot on. I think it's kind of grassroots approach against hate. But on one hand, it's easy to quantify an incident. It's difficult to quantify
but it is hard to quantify. You know, it's much more difficult to quantify the positive things that are happening. People are not reporting on the positive, right? So, so hopefully over time, we will see these grassroots efforts, what you're doing in your community. And again, the education aspect is over time, if we are doing these things, our neighborhoods, our students, our children are all, you know, taking action and, you know, making a difference. And hopefully we will see these numbers stay stagnant, go down. If people are reporting, obviously we will see more, but hopefully in our communities we see less. So, and this is just a guide. We have this, again, online. We use this in all aspects of the work that we do in congregations, in schools, in different places of worship, where just how to become an ally. Obviously, it seems pretty straightforward, but a lot of people really don't, you know, until you really dive into it and really talk about it, about support a target whether you know them or not. Super important, right? Like, we all need to, again, stand up for that person and not to participate. Not just not to participate, but also don't stay silent, right? Tell the aggressors to stop. Inform a trusted adult. If it's an adult that it's happening to, obviously go to the police or something like that and get to know them instead of judging them, and become an ally, help support in your neighborhood. So these are all different ways that you can combat hate and discrimination, anti-Semitism in your neighborhood. You can go to the next slide. Ways you personally, we always like to tell people, like, well, what can I do at home? Like, even if it's just me, myself, what are things I can do? And how do I get started? Well, one thing is, what are you watching? You know, what are you watching at home? So that's a really important thing, to look at what you're watching, understanding different perspectives, different viewpoints, and not, you know, just keep intaking the stuff that we agree with, but learning about other sides so then you can figure out how to combat that, right? So what are you reading? Same thing. Read a variety of different articles and just look at what you're reading, see if there's bias, discrimination in what you're reading, and really think about it, and question some of the things. Where are you getting your news from? It's a big, there's so many different ways, and now with this Twitter culture that we only like things in brief snippets, what were you going to say? 260 characters. Are we really getting the full story? Are we questioning? Are we asking ourselves, what is the, you know, the truth behind this? So really, really thinking about that. How often are you the only person in a group? Like the only person who's questioning, the only person who's asking a question, only thinking about something? And how loud is your echo chamber? So are you only talking to yourself? Are you talking to other people? Are you listening only to yourself and other people? Or are you inviting other perspectives?
Where do children learn hate? Right, at home, okay? When I was growing up, I lived in an all-Catholic neighborhood. It was before Vatican II. And anytime there was an incident of anti-Semitism, swastikas on our house, or throwing us off our bikes, or throwing pennies at our feet, or whatever, and my mother would storm to the parents
And I was going to your point is, where do children learn hate? They learn hate at home.
Right.
And I think if we go back to your example about saying hello and being welcoming, and also just if somebody says something, instead of us being quickly judging and you are an awful person, is where did that comment come from, and why do they have that comment, and can I help them understand that that's not the truth, right? If we just automatically, which is what our education is about, our anti-bias education and our discrimination education is about, is if we can address it there and educate, hopefully, if you change one person, slowly that grassroots things will continue to happen. Which leads me to the things that we do in our ADL community, because we do have a lot of programs based on this. So we do come speak to adults and always are open to doing programs like this. We have a bunch of A World of Difference trainings, BNA trainings, all different sorts of trainings depending on who you want to train, whether it's a group of students, whether it's a group of educators, teachers, all on how to empower teachers, adults, and students to learn about bias, learn about discrimination, and how to combat it. So if you are ever interested in any of that, we offer those sort of programs for people. We also have...
Not just adults, but also for students.
Well, you got a concert tonight.
Yes. Our concert against hate. You can still register now if you want.
It's free.
Yes, it's free. Gloria Stefan is going to be there. Josh Groban is going to be there. It's going to be a fun night of online entertainment. And who doesn't love good music? So we do have those. We do a series of programs also. We've been doing them obviously online. Last week we just did a program called Bias in Our Backyard, and it actually addressed the education laws that are being passed in our Texas government. Yeah.
Do you provide, and just make a comment here, but do you provide elements of programs that can be included in the curriculum?
Yes.
Like at our religious school?
Yes.
So, sorry. For religious schools, we have a program that is called Words to Action, and it is combating anti-Semitism for students. It's mostly targeted for high school and college-age students. I wouldn't really recommend it for lower than 8th grade, but it's a whole curriculum of combating anti-Semitism that we do in religious schools.
You would just contact you to
Yeah.
get that program?
Absolutely.
Are these programs, these curriculums, are they in churches?
So we also have a program called BNA, which is anti-Semitic, it's education on anti-Semitism for non-Jews. So it can be taught in schools that are non-Jewish, that are non-Jewish institutions. That can be schools, it can be churches, anything like that. So we have programs that are specifically targeted for the Jewish community and for outside the Jewish community.
The Jewish community programs are really ones that are faced, if you are a Jewish student, how to handle anti-Semitism. The BNA program is to educate what is anti-Semitism, so people become familiar of the Jewish culture and how not to be anti-Semitic. So they're addressing two different audiences, so they're two different curriculums. Then we have a third curriculum, which if anybody has connections to their school districts, it's called No Place for Hate. Sorry, couldn't get that out. No Place for Hate curriculum, and that is a K-12 program that goes into the school and has the entire school do activities. It gets a student group together and they become the student ambassadors. 10 to 15 students become the student ambassador. And then those students lead the entire school through programs on how learning about bias and learning about discrimination and how to inform and educate yourself and be proactive. So they're really different. We bucket them into the different audiences to address the needs of those communities.
For No Place for Hate, too, also we go into the schools and the whole school would sign what we call resolution against hate. And it is an anti-bullying resolution. And throughout the year, they're required to do a minimum of 3 anti-hate, anti-bullying activities. They would register with our education director. And at the end of the year, they are presented with a really awesome banner that states that they are a No Place for Hate school. Prairie just celebrated its 10th year as an open experience school.
Right.
That's fantastic. It's the college campuses that really concern me.
So we also, this year we formed a partnership with Hillel, with National Hillel, so that we can really work on focusing on anti-Semitism on campuses. It's a major focus of ours for the school.
And it's the more left-leaning liberal campuses that are the hotbed of most of that activity, which, for some of us is counterintuitive because we may have more progressive viewpoints, but there's a continuum, and it's just very unsettling what you see at Stanford and NYU and some of these other schools, and I'm sure even right here in Texas too.
Absolutely.
UT has had incidences,
Oh, we've had
and that's very disconcerting.
But
It's
it's
why
done in high schools too. I mean, I know
No, I'm not denying it, because high schoolers
It's
become
schools.
college students.
I live up in the South Lake area, and they've had, it wasn't just what
No.
happened at the
No, it's not.
program.
Right.
There's been a lot of hate within dances and that kind of stuff.
We are very concerned about what is happening in school districts across the country and in school districts and in school boards across the community. It is a major focus of ours.
The FBI has opened up multiple investigations against South Lake.
And we work very, very closely with the FBI.
Yep.
We have contacts with them. I was just texting with one of my FBI agents on Friday.
Both my children graduated from South Lake. I'm so glad that they're not in that school system now.
And I will say, to your point about the college campuses and what's going on in schools and everything, again, being new to the organization, so I see things through a fresh lens and, being new. But the commitment of the national organization to form national partnerships to combat those issues, right? Our local regional offices are to help when there are incidents in our region, help respond locally. We know that we sometimes need to visit constituents' homes. We need to go talk to different organizations. We need to have contacts with local law enforcement. We need to be able to be on the grounds and help when and where is needed. It's the national partnerships that give us the introduction to all the Hillels in Texas, right, where we can do this tracking and monitoring and resource gathering together, and we can be collaborative in our efforts to help solve these problems. So I do think over what I have seen is that there are these partnerships, and you're going to see them grow. We also have the URJ.
Yeah, we have a partnership with the URJ, Unit for Reform Judaism, as well as a partnership with USCJ, United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. Along with Hillel, we've also formed partnerships with we formed a partnership this year with SCM, we formed a partnership with NAACP, we formed a partnership. It is a huge priority of Jonathan and ADL in general to form these partnerships, because if you work together, you get things done faster, right? Hopefully.
The reality, our world changed after Tree of Life Synagogue. For so many communities, I mean, we're not different or special in that regard. We now have to have an off-duty police officer whenever we have services or large public gatherings. We've got to keep the doors locked. We've tinted the glass. I mean, and again, we're not unique, but it's just the way that we've had to change our whole mindset of what's welcoming and an opening community, and balance that against the needs to maintain some degree of security.
We've seen an increase in incidents of hate such as those not only in the Jewish community but around all different groups. I mean, if you just look at, was it 2000? Must have been 2019. What happened at the Walmart in El Paso, which was the
Right.
largest incident of hate against the Latin community.
Right.
Hispanic community. I was in El Paso that day because I'm from El Paso. I was in El Paso, and my brother-in-law is a first responder in El Paso. We were with him when he got the call to go. But that's like the large. So we're seeing rises in hate in the Jewish community for sure, but in
Everywhere. Well, churches have had many shootings as well.
So the face of hate in the United States especially has changed dramatically over the last 100 years. If you look at, I don't have my slides or my notes, so I'm just going off my head, but like if you look at what the hate was like in the 1930s and 40s with the Holocaust and everything like that, it was blatant. There was rampant anti-Semitism in the United States then. As we moved on into like the 1950s and the 1960s, that's when the hate became more undercover with the hooded Ku Klux Klan. It was in the community, but nobody technically knew who the people promoting the hate were. It was hooded. You moved further into like the 80s, and you had like a David Duke, where it became a little bit more vocal, like open, where people were more open about their thing. And then on into the 2010s, you had someone like a Richard Spencer who organized the Unite the Right rally in 2016. And that's like, it was right out there in the public. People were marching with tiki torches. They will not replace us. It was right out there. After the rally, Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2016, it went a little undercover again because people were getting, their faces were all over. They were losing their jobs. They were being outed in public. And we have seen a interesting influx of hate right now. Like from 2016 till about like 2018, it was really undercover a lot. There was a lot of hate, but it was a lot of online hate. It was a lot of hidden hate. It was under pseudonyms. It was in chat groups. It was in things like that. The face of hate is now starting to be more public again, which has been a rise in the last several years with these incidents of public, like shootings and vandalisms and things like that, because people are feeling more emboldened than they ever have before. But it's interesting to watch the way the faces of hate go over the last, it's been like a up and down. And we're more on the upswing of those hoods are coming off again.
There were some good people on both sides. No, you're not. The federal government came out with all these millions of dollars for religious organizations to harden the security of their campus.
Yes.
Right? And we worked with the SCN, and we incorporated data and ADL into our grant submissions to also harden our security, perimeter fencing, set extra cameras, blah, blah, etc. And we were told synagogues will get preferential treatment, and we were told if you're a first-time applicant, you get special treatment, and we were all but assured we would get our $150,000 request. Well, we ended up with bupkis, okay, and we, of course, trying to get answers, it's, you know, I might as well talk to the wall, but in any event, we're going to apply again, and there's other grants available, but we were told, well, we're interested in specific terrorist incidents.
A lot of people that are filling out grants like that come to us, and we provide numbers and statistics that are really helpful. So if you have areas in your grant applications that you need help with specific numbers and things like that, let me know. And I do this I give those numbers out a lot. So that helps with grant.
I mean, we supplied the information last October, the guy in Grand Prairie, I forget his name, and other local incidences of hate. But is the federal government telling us unless we have a shooting incident or a bomb or something like that, I mean, how do you weigh that? How do you balance that? Oh, our incidents were down. Darn, we're not going to get our terrorist money. So it's a little debilitating.
It's hard, yeah.
Previous year, we had a lot of grants funded up in this area. This past year, Houston, San Antonio had a lot of grants funded down that particular year. Allocation of dollars is a complex topic, and I think it gets into a lot of things that are not necessarily shared with the public.
Probably not.
But I do agree, and if you're open, I'd love to send you our risk section to the NSGP grant. So
I'd be happy to help you with the specific statistics. That I do that for a lot of organizations. In a couple slides is my contact information. I actually didn't bring my cards with me. I don't know what I was thinking, but my contact information is on there. I'm gonna let Stacey.
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say, if all of you are interested, standing up against hate, we are having our walk against hate and on April 3rd in Dallas. So I have some postcards if anybody wants to take it. I encourage you to come and join us and walk against hate. If anybody is so motivated and would like to start a team, or you would like to start a team with your congregation, we would love that. We would love to have you.
It's not on Shabbat, I pray.
It is not. It is a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. So we would love to have you come join us. It's going to be a fun morning to, we're going to have different speakers, DJ, anybody. My children are going to get their friends and they're going to come volunteer. So if you need volunteer hours, do you need volunteer hours? Yes, if you grab your friends, you can take my email address and you can come down and volunteer with us. So if you have students who would like to volunteer, you have to be 16 to come alone, or if you're under 16, you have to come with an adult. But we would love to have you. Bring your friends, bring your family. But it's a great way also to see the work that we do and introduce your friends and family and your congregation to the work that we do. Yeah, so we would love to have you. So we thank you very much. The next slide, this is our contact information. I have postcards. If you have any other questions, Leah and I will stick around for a minute or more. Yes?
So if someone is witness to an incident, as small or as big as it is, it could be a swastika, it could be something that is said. What is the appropriate response that we need to teach in the schools, teachers, to the congregation? I think that's really, really important. And I don't know that the average person, someone just shrug off a lot of things. So you talk about underreporting. This could be there's a real issue.
Well, first of all,
This is a good question. We appreciate the question.
First of all, if you are witness to an incident or you know anything, which I should have put a slide up there, we would very much appreciate you reporting the incident at adl.org/report-incident. On that form, you can fill out all the information. You can upload screenshots, pictures, etc., and it comes directly to me. That information.
If you can't remember the whole thing, just go to adl.org and you will see it right
Yeah.
on the homepage.
So if you see it, that's one thing, is we would love for you to report these incidents, because if we don't know that the incidents are happening, we can't track them properly. The first thing is if somebody is afraid for their safety, we immediately request that they contact law enforcement. If you are scared for your safety, that first things first, take care of yourself and contact law enforcement. If it's an incident of, every incident of hate is different. If it's something that somebody's seen, like a swastika or a thing, take a picture of it, report it to a trusted individual. Please, though, don't remove it necessarily before you take a picture of it or report it to anybody. It's really important that we actually see the incident in its full state. If something's happening to you as an individual, this is actually part of our Words to Action curriculum. We have a bunch of different ways to respond to hate, ranging from stopping somebody and saying, whoa, that hurts, this is why it hurts, to doing a change in subject and moving over to a trusted individual to explain something. If you're afraid of repercussions, where you can just somehow change the subject and then report the incident so that it's a little more undercover, if that's what you feel more comfortable in. We have a whole range of options of different ways. Yeah.
I would make a couple of suggestions.
Sure.
At the synagogue here, we created an incident blog.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I think that every synagogue should have an incident blog, and maybe they do, I don't know.
That's a great thing.
But then secondly, we have a connection now amongst the President's Council in Tarrant County with Bethel, Beth Israel, CBI, Abad Shalom, Beth Shalom, that if an incident occurs, there's a series of numbers, and I think it's mediated all
We-
of us when something happens within the community, and it would be even cooler if it extended into maybe Dallas.
We have one in Dallas as well. It's called the Community Security Initiative, and it's through the Federation in Dallas. That is very similar to that, where if an incident happens in the Dallas area, including the suburbs like, Plano, Frisco, McKinney, et cetera, it's reported to the person who coordinates there. His name is Bill Humphrey, and that gets sent out. So there is a very similar thing in the Dallas area. Yeah, we'll have to connect. I didn't realize. We'll talk to Hubby.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? We can hang out and chat if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Can this slide presentation be made available so we can post it on our website?
Let me check on that.
It would be on the secured side of our website.
I think I can send it as a PDF, but let me double check on that. I'll just check with Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting and informative and helpful. Thank you.